Welcome, listeners, to the Let's Talk and Walk podcast. Today, we are walking by the beach discussing a new topic about the modern loneliness epidemic. It's something that comes up so often now, this feeling of, loneliness. But it's not just about being alone, is it? It feels deeper, like a lack of real connection. It's even being called an epidemic, which sounds pretty serious.
It really does. And that's what we're going to explore today. We'll try to get a handle on what modern loneliness really is, maybe how we got here. And importantly, its impacts, which are surprisingly significant, and, what we might actually be able to do about it. We've looked at quite a bit of material on this.
Okay, so let's unpack that first part, defining loneliness today. How do we even pin that down?
Right. I think the most crucial thing to grasp is that it's subjective. It's about the perceived gap, the difference between the social connections you want and the ones you feel you actually have. It's not just about counting how many people you saw today.
So you could be surrounded by people, like at work or even online, and still feel profoundly lonely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, conversely, someone might live quite an isolated life but not feel lonely at all because their needs for connection are met. It's that internal feeling.
That makes sense. It's the quality, not just quantity.
Precisely. And the research often breaks it down further. There's social loneliness, feeling like you lack a wider network, a community, a sense of belonging. And then there's emotional loneliness that's missing a really deep, intimate connection with someone, like a close friend or partner you can confide in.
And you can feel one or both.
Oh, absolutely. You might have a great partner but feel disconnected from your community, or have lots of friends but lack that one deep confidant.
Which brings us back to the digital paradox. We're hyper-connected online, but still lonely.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the modern picture. The term you sometimes hear, artificial intimacy. It captures something important. Online interactions often just lack the depth. You miss the nonverbal cues, the shared experience, the vulnerability that builds real bonds.
Likes and comments. They feel a bit empty sometimes.
They can, yeah. It's like getting a quick hit. Mimics closeness, but doesn't really satisfy that fundamental human need for deep, authentic connection. Someone called it social junk food.
Social junk food. I like that. It fills a space but doesn't nourish.
Exactly. It creates this kind of illusion of connection. But our brains, our evolutionary wiring, we crave something more substantial, more sustained.
Okay, so let's talk about the scale. That word epidemic, is it really justified? Is the problem that big?
Well, the data consistently points towards widespread prevalence. Lots of studies across different countries and age groups show significant numbers of people reporting feeling lonely, often or always. It's prompted health bodies to use strong terms like epidemic or crisis. I mean, the U.S. Surgeon General declared it a public health epidemic back in 2023.
Wow. Okay, that signals it's being taken very seriously.
Definitely. It signals a recognition of its really significant impact on population well-being.
But is this feeling completely new? Or have people felt this kind of disconnection before, just maybe differently?
That's a really interesting question the historical sources touch on. While our specific situation with tech is unique, the anxiety about widespread loneliness isn't entirely unprecedented. You can find commentators, say in the 1950s or 60s, already talking about a modern scourge of alienation and disconnection amid post-war changes.
So maybe it's a recurring theme when society changes quickly.
It seems plausible. Periods of rapid social, economic, or technological upheaval might disrupt old ways of connecting before new ones fully form, leading to these kinds of societal concerns popping up again.
And another tricky part is that it's often hidden. Someone can seem fine, busy, socially active,
but feel completely isolated inside.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because it's subjective, it's internal. You can't measure it just by looking at someone's social calendar or friend count online. That perceived quality of connection is the key, and it's invisible from the outside, which of course makes it harder to identify and address both personally and from a public health standpoint.
Right, it complicates things.
It really does. And thinking about that history for a moment, it's fascinating how the view of being alone has shifted. Before maybe the 19th century, solitude, or loneliness as it was sometimes called, wasn't automatically seen as bad.
It could be positive, like for thinking or spirituality.
Yeah, exactly. It could be valued for reflection, religious communion, even seen medically as a state needing balance, not necessarily a problem to be solved. Being alone wasn't inherently a negative state.
So when did loneliness become this negative thing we understand today?
The shift really seems to happen in the 19th century. Think about industrialization, people moving to big, anonymous cities, leaving traditional communities behind. Individualism rising, social ties weakened, people felt more like isolated units. There's that quote about people being shut up in the solitude of his own heart. That's when loneliness starts taking on its modern, painful meaning, a deficit, a lack.
And then it evolved again in the 20th century.
Yes, it became more pathologized, framed more as a psychological issue, something to be measured, studied, maybe even treated. And the narrative of it being a crisis seems to pop up during big societal shifts, like after the wars or, well, now with the digital age.
So the history tells us it's not just about smartphones.
Absolutely. It's a deeper symptom of how societies adapt or struggle to adapt to fundamental changes that disrupt our established ways of connecting with each other.
Okay, so let's dig into the drivers now. What's making it feel so widespread in our current world?
Right. It's definitely a mix of things. Technology is a huge factor, but like we said, it cuts both ways.
We talked about the illusion of connection, the social junk food. What else about tech?
Well, there's the way platforms are designed. Algorithms are often built to keep you engaged, right? Which can mean showing you more of what you already like or agree with.
The filter bubbles.
Exactly. Filter bubbles, echo chambers.
Yeah.
They can limit your exposure to different views, different people. That might make it harder to empathize, to feel connected to a broader community that feels complex or, challenging.
And then there's the pressure to look perfect online.
Oh, definitely. The performative self. Everyone's posting their highlight reel. It leads to so much social comparison.
FOMO, fear of missing out.
Right. And that constant comparison can make you feel inadequate or like your own life isn't good enough. It makes authentic connection really hard because you're interacting with facades, not real, messy, vulnerable people.
Plus, our phones themselves can just get in the way.
Yep. There's a term for it, technoference. Technology literally interfering with face-to-face moments. You're talking to someone, but they're glancing at their phone. Or you are.
Guilty.
We all are, probably. Add to that the potential for digital device addiction. Some recent surveys suggest a lot of people feel addicted. These devices can become an escape when we feel awkward or anxious in social situations, creating this cycle of retreating digitally.
Okay, so tech is a big piece. What about broader societal shifts?
Urbanization is still relevant. Cities offer opportunities, but they can also be anonymous and isolating places despite the crowds. And a really key factor is the decline of what sociologists call third places.
Those informal spots, like cafes, libraries, parks.
Exactly. Places outside home, first place, and work, second place. They're crucial for spontaneous chats, meeting neighbors, building those weaker ties that create a sense of community. As those decline, or we use them less, communities can feel more fragmented.
And changes in families and work?
Yeah, more people living alone, families often spread out geographically. That means less built-in, day-to-day support for many. And work culture has shifted too. Remote work offers flexibility, but reduces those casual office interactions. The gig economy means less stable work communities. Constant connectivity leads to technostress. Even AI coming into workplaces raises concerns about reducing human interaction points.
It's a complex web of factors.
It really is. No single cause. And while anyone can feel lonely, some groups seem to be particularly vulnerable right now.
Older adults seem like an obvious group, right?
Yes, and for clear reasons. Things like retirement can mean losing a daily social structure and colleagues. Bereavement becomes more common, losing partners and friends. And declining physical health can make it harder to get out and socialize. The WHO highlights that a significant number of older adults face social isolation, and the health impacts are serious. Plus, with populations aging globally, the sheer number of older people potentially at risk is growing.
But surprisingly, perhaps the data also points to young people, Gen Z.
It's one of the most striking and maybe concerning findings. Despite being digital natives, constantly online, young adults, say 18 to 24, often report the highest rates of loneliness in surveys.
Higher than older people.
Often, yes. Some surveys put it well over 50%, even higher in some studies for young adults. It really drives home that digital connection doesn't automatically equal felt connection.
Maybe too much online time hinders developing real-world skills.
That's a concern, yeah. If you default to online interaction, maybe you don't get as much practice navigating the nuances, the discomforts, the rewards of face-to-face relationships, which are essential for building deep bonds. And it's critical to remember this isn't just about age. Poverty, lack of transport, living in poorly designed neighborhoods, systemic discrimination. These are huge factors.
So structural issues play a big role.
Absolutely. Loneliness often intersects with disadvantage. People facing multiple barriers just have fewer opportunities and resources to build and maintain supportive connections. It's often a consequence of wider inequities.
Okay, so it's widespread, complex drivers, vulnerable groups. Let's talk about the consequences. Is it just feeling sad, or is it more serious?
Oh, it's far more serious than just a fleeting bad mood. The research is quite clear. Chronic loneliness has really profound detrimental impacts on mental health, physical health, even on society as a whole.
Okay, like what for mental health?
Significantly increased risk of depression and anxiety. It's often a vicious cycle. Loneliness can lead to depression, which makes you withdraw more, deepening the loneliness. It's also strongly linked to cognitive decline as people age and a much higher risk of developing dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. Some studies found the loneliest individuals were more than twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And tragically, it's a major risk factor for suicide ideation and attempts.
That's heavy. What about the physical side? I've heard comparisons to smoking.
Yes, those comparisons are made frequently in public health discussions.
Yeah.
The impact of chronic loneliness on mortality risk is considered comparable to smoking about 15 cigarettes a day, or obesity, or physical inactivity.
15 cigarettes a day?
Through chronic stress responses. Loneliness triggers physiological stress, increased inflammation, higher blood pressure, hormonal changes. Over time, this constant strain takes a toll. It increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, stroke. It also appears to weaken the immune system, making people more susceptible to infections and perhaps less responsive to vaccines.
So it can actually shorten your life.
The evidence points that way. It's linked to increased morbidity, that's illness and premature mortality, across a range of conditions. It essentially accelerates physical decline.
And beyond individual health, what does it do to society?
Widespread loneliness corrodes the social fabric. People who feel disconnected are less likely to trust others, less likely to participate in community life, vote, volunteer.
Social cohesion weakens.
Exactly. It can lead to lower productivity in the workforce due to the health and cognitive impacts. It places a heavier burden on healthcare systems. Lonely people tend to use health services more often. And for young people, it can negatively affect their educational outcomes and development. It's this negative feedback loop impacting individuals and the collective.
Okay, this is sounding quite grim. But there must be things we can do. What does the path towards connection look like?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not hopeless. The solutions need to be multi-layered, though. Individual actions, community initiatives, how we use technology, and broader policy changes.
What can individuals do? If you're feeling lonely,
Focus on the quality of interactions, not just the number. Actively seek out opportunities for face-to-face time. Find groups or activities based on genuine shared interests or values that helps build authentic connections. Proactively engaging in your local community, volunteering, that can make a big difference. Also, cognitive approaches can help. Things like mindfulness or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques can help challenge negative thoughts about social situations that might be holding you back.
and being mindful about tech use.
Definitely. Using it as a tool to facilitate real-world connection, not replace it. Setting boundaries around device use, especially during social time.
What about the community level, revitalizing those third places?
Yes, that's seen as crucial. Investing in accessible public spaces like parks, libraries, community centers where people can just bump into each other, interact informally. Also supporting social support networks and group activities, especially programs tailored for those most at risk, like older adults or new parents. Intergenerational programs are often highlighted too. Connecting different age groups can combat loneliness for everyone involved.
Tech was part of the problem. Can it be part of the solution too? AI companions, VR?
It has potential, certainly, especially for reaching people who are geographically isolated or have mobility issues. AI chatbots, social robots, virtual reality social spaces, these are being explored.
Yeah.
But there are significant ethical concerns. Can AI truly provide empathy? Is there a risk of people becoming dependent on artificial relationships instead of seeking out human ones?
And data privacy?
Huge issue. Data privacy, security, the potential for companies to exploit emotional vulnerability for profit. These are really serious considerations, especially when dealing with vulnerable users.
Yeah.
The consensus seems to be that technology should augment or facilitate real human connection, not aim to replace it. We need strong ethical guidelines and safeguards.
So individual and community efforts are vital. Tech needs caution. What about bigger systemic changes? Policy.
Absolutely essential. We need public health strategies that recognize loneliness as a major issue. Some talk about a connection in all policies approach, meaning that when governments make decisions about, say, transportation, housing, urban planning, education, they should consider the impact on social connection. Does this policy bring people together or push them apart? It means investing in social infrastructure, the spaces and programs that foster community, integrating loneliness, screening, and support into healthcare systems, running public awareness campaigns to reduce the stigma.
And tackling those underlying inequities we talked about.
Crucial. Addressing poverty, improving access to resources, creating more equitable opportunities. These are fundamental to reducing the barriers that contribute to loneliness for so many. So looking ahead, the challenges remain right. Aging populations mean more older adults potentially at risk, though the picture might be complex.
And the high rates among youth are a big worry for the future.
Definitely. What does it mean for society if generations grow up feeling disconnected? That's a major concern.
And the technology paradox isn't going away.
No. AI, VR, whatever comes next, these tools will get more sophisticated. The risk that they become substitutes for, rather than supplements to, real connection will likely persist. We have to be wary of techno-solutionism, thinking some new app or gadget will fix this deep human need. It won't, not on its own. We need to address the structural and social roots too. And other challenges, like how do we accurately measure loneliness across different cultures? How do we overcome the stigma? How do we allocate resources effectively for interventions? And critically, how do we ensure equity? Solutions have to be accessible to everyone, especially those facing the biggest disadvantages. Otherwise, we risk widening the gap. The future seems likely to involve this complex mix of online and offline life. The real task is figuring out how to intentionally design our communities, our technologies, and even our personal habits to foster genuine, deep connection in this hybrid world, making sure digital spaces encourage authenticity and physical spaces remain vibrant places for real human interaction.
It really sounds like a call to reevaluate what being connected truly means, and to consciously build a society that prioritizes authentic relationships on every level.
So the question for you, the listener, to ponder is, in a world constantly pushing for more digital interaction and individual achievement, how can we consciously choose to cultivate spaces and habits, both online and off, that truly nourish our fundamental human need for deep, vulnerable, and authentic connection? What might that look like in your own life or community? All right, that wraps up our walk for today. Definitely gave us a lot to think about, maybe something to mull over with a coffee or a snack.
It really did. Hope you also enjoyed the wave sounds in the background. It was a really interesting one, and we truly hope you all listening enjoyed it as much as we did. Thanks for joining us. We greatly value your engagement. If you found this episode informative, please consider leaving a like. We also welcome your suggestions for new topics and areas you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Feel free to share those in the comments section. And finally, to ensure you don't miss out on our upcoming content, please hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends. We look forward to bringing you more interesting discussions. Thank you for listening to the Let's Just Talk podcast.